raggedy rock and roll, trying to find out what's the 411, the 911. How you doing?
Doing great, doing terrific. I'm so excited. We have been having an exciting time here at Virginia Beach. Our citizens have been coming out, they're speaking their mind, and this has been awesome. Again, welcome to GA for Justice. It is our weekly show that we sit down, we talk to community people and share our thoughts, and they share their thoughts with us. And it's always exciting. So I bring you greetings. I am Georgia Allen, and I'd like to welcome all of our listeners, those who are listening right now, but those who may have to listen a little later on in the day or the afternoon and evening. As always, we are a community talk show where we have a conversation for information, a conversation for correction, as well as a conversation for transformation. We have an awesome and absolutely awesome special guest today. We have with us today Melissa Lukeson. And if you haven't met her, you need to meet her. Melissa Lukeson is someone who has come to Hampton Roads and the Virginia Beach area, and she has just been an awesome activist. She's a business owner, a community activist. And in 2010, Melissa Lukeson did what? She abandoned her 13-year career of working with Wall Street bankers and opened a local small business right here in Virginia Beach. Her studio keeps her very busy, but not enough to keep her out of good trouble. I think she was listening to somebody by the name of Mr. John Lewis, our civil rights icon. She spends much of her spare time debating politics on TikTok, working as a community activist, and dragging politicians on a daily basis. We are so excited to have her here. We are here talking today, Power of 10, the power of 10 districts. So with that being said, let's welcome Mrs. Melissa Lukeson.
Hello.
We are so excited to have you here today because you and I both have been out on the battlefield. We've been out in the community, speaking on behalf of the power of 10, the power of 10 districts. So, and if you'd like to share a little bit more about yourself, feel free to do so. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the 10 district system because I'm introducing you to some new people.
Great. Well, I don't like to talk about myself. I love to talk about other people. So
me too. I can relate. I do the same thing. I try to talk about everybody but me.
That's right. All right. That's right. I'm ready to talk about the business. That's right.
All right.
I will say this. I am new. I don't know if you may have heard me say this, but it's important that I share with people that I didn't, until COVID happened, I didn't even know who our governor was.
Oh, wow.
I was not politically engaged. I was raised, you don't talk about politics, which in my mind, if you don't talk about politics, then I guess it's not that important. And you just don't talk about it. So it just kept me at an arm's length. And so when COVID, happened, obviously we started paying attention. I had a lot of time on my hands. My business was closed for 6 weeks, which I was happy to do so during the pandemic. And it started from there, and I started paying attention. And I'm a quick learner. So
I see that. And let's give you a round of applause because I am so glad that you decided to learn a little about politics because you have been such a support system to the Black community, and we want to commend you and thank you for that.
Thank you. And the only regret I have is not doing the learning myself until I was in my 40s, and just obviously raising family and just trying to go through life. You get busy, but that's something that I do regret. But I'm making up for it now.
You sure are.
Yes.
So tell the audience a little bit about what is going on in Virginia Beach with these input sessions, listening sessions, and sharing with the community and allowing the community to share their thoughts with regards to the voting system that was put in place last November in the city of Virginia Beach.
Yes. So what we have going on right now we have some community input sessions that the city council decided to kind of push through. And they started on March 25th and they end on April 3rd. They're doing 12 input sessions, community engagement sessions in 10 days. Talk about rush. And the schedule for it came out relatively late because they needed to, everybody needed to coordinate because each of these meetings happen. There are 10 in-person meetings at a location around the city. So they made sure that they placed one meeting in every single council person's district. So because we have 10 districts, 10 meetings. And then they did 2 virtual options. What I thought was great, because nobody knew what to expect. I'd never been to anything like this. We had never done anything like this as a city either. So I wasn't sure what to expect, but I really have enjoyed these community input sessions because, we're able to, when we go speak at city council, you're very constrained. Mayor Dyer will interrupt you and send you right on your way mid-sentence if that buzzer hits 3 minutes, and then you got a police officer over to your right or left, where you feel that, obviously we want to handle things when we're at city council in a civil manner, but you got to leave the podium at 3 minutes. No one, the beautiful thing about going to these community engagement sessions is the people with UVA, they're the ones moderating. Everybody's been amazingly respectful with their time, including myself. Sometimes, I want to go over. But what I just love is that everybody comes in, they show a video, which is not historically accurate, which we'll get to. And they show you the short video about the history, inaccurate history, but of course we're used to that. And then you immediately go into speaking, and, you can just walk up to the mic and say, I strongly support 10-1, or you can do what I do, which is prepare a 3-minute speech, time it, practice it, do the whole thing, and make sure that I get the points across that I'm trying to get across, because my mission is actually public education. Going to these meetings, it's not actually to give my input. The city is very clear where I stand on 10-1 and has been very clear on where I stand. I mean, the first time I spoke about this lawsuit with the city was in January of 2022, I believe, which was the appeal. I might have actually done a speech in 2020 at the end of 2021. So I've been following the Holloway case that you were on, and I've kind of followed that through the course once I learned about it. And so I'm trying to use these community engagement sessions to educate the public about the history of the city, because the city's not going to do it.
No.
Yeah. So they're really great. I mean, a lot of times they end early because there might only be 12 speakers. They allot an hour and a half. It's recorded. You can go to Speak Up VB right now, and you can go to the project information, and then you can click on past meetings. So you can actually go back and watch every meeting, in your district and in other districts, which I think is wonderful. And we've had a good support. And I don't know about you, Georgia, but did you notice, have you noticed a pickup in attendance since I feel like word might be getting out?
Absolutely. And I think what happened also is the size of the rooms were different. If you notice, they were putting people in rooms of 60 people, 70 people. And to be honest, all those rooms were pretty full.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. The 60 or 70 people were full. But then when they put us in the library where they had 248 seats, mm-hmm. we added additional people. And then at Kellum, they had up to 100 seats. Mm-hmm. And neither one of those two facilities were full to capacity. No. There were a lot of people, but they were not full to capacity. Right. So I think they have kind of been about the same in terms of engagement. Mm-hmm. like you, I like the fact that they did this. I wasn't overly anxious to see them do this simply because of someone who has lived in the city for so long. I was skeptical of why they were doing it and whether or not they were going to just plant a bunch of people in there saying that this is what we want, this, without any regard to what we were hearing on the street. Because you and I both have talked to council members and they said, well, in my district, the people said this. But then when you showed up at the meeting, we heard totally the opposite of what council members who were supposed to be representing the people in their districts, it was totally opposites. The people that came to the meeting said, I'm for 10-1, while the council member said, the people in my district says they're concerned. So remember that?
Whoa. Oh, very much so.
Yes.
And very much, it just shows you how out of touch council members are, because the people that those council members are talking to are not the everyday citizens. We have seen the example of how many people have come up and said, I always thought it was weird we voted for all these people. I could never keep up with all these candidates. I just picked whoever I saw lots of signs for. I admittedly did that myself until I was an informed voter. And it just shows you how, and I don't mean uninformed voters as in a derogatory way. I mean, certainly we have willfully ignorant voters. That's a difference, right? But but uninformed voters, I was an uninformed voter. So I don't, I try to really look at things when we're doing, these engagement sessions and really take a step back and look at what people are saying. We've also heard people saying they had no idea what these engagement sessions were all about. So every meeting we have like the one person that comes up and is like, well, I thought this was about how to make our elections more safe. We need to get rid of the drop boxes and only paper ballots and only one day and maybe one Saturday. And they're like thinking that they're coming up about like election security and stuff, there's always like the one person, which again, I call them, those are the willfully ignorant voters. Right. But it also,
but you know what I liked is having someone from the community go up to the microphone and stand there and say, you know what, I work the polls as an election official, and what you're saying is not true. We have checks and rechecks, and our voting system is very secure. And that also, was wonderful to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. It's absolutely. There are a few, I've only worked one election. Unpopular opinion, I kind of think like jury duty, that working elections should be like a civic duty. I think that if more citizens worked the polls, that they would have a better understanding of the security, the process. And I think it would change people's opinions about that. But you're right. It was great having, so we've had at every session, we've had, a mix of a little bit of everything, right? A little bit of every person in the community. And I just love that people are coming out of the woodwork, because it is undeniable that we have community support for the 10-1, because there's so many faces, Georgia. I mean, you and I we're in this, right? We've
never seen these people before.
Never seen these people.
We have never seen these people before. So, like we said, at first we were a little hesitant because we know our city well enough to know that they have a tendency to do some not so scrupulous things.
That's right. I do think it's important for viewers and for citizens to understand, though, that Weldon Cooper admittedly has never done, and I not only confirm this through watching a city council workshop, which, by the way, for viewers, city council, if you are a Facebook member, you can go to the Virginia Beach City government page. Every Tuesday, there is usually a workshop or an informal session and a formal session every other Tuesday. Sorry. We're first and third Tuesday of the month. I should know this. I'm so active. I have to think about all the meetings. So I watched a workshop where they had said that they hadn't done this before. election system surveys. Okay. And then I confirmed that yesterday with Jane, who's one of the moderators. And she did say this was the first time. I was definitely very hesitant because, of course, the city with their history, right? They're going to pick, I'm like, of course they pick somebody, UVA with no past history of doing these election surveys. But they are doing a great job. They are doing a great job. And the supportive. So when you go to speak, if people in the audience, I just love this because the civility of it too is really wonderful. If you agree with something that a speaker says, you raise your hand, jiggle your fingers, and you see hands shoot up all over the room, and so you feel like, oh, people are agreeing, but they may not be confident enough to go up and speak at the microphone, right?
And that's wonderful because they can actually listen, gather more information. I talk to any number of people who say, I'm not comfortable speaking, but I've been taking notes and I like what I hear, and it's educated me. And so that's the other great thing about these sessions. But we want to talk about the power of 10.
Yes.
10-1 voting system.
Yes.
And just share a little bit with the listening audience. And we're going to be sending this out to our Facebook page, all of our social media. So after this is over, we'll send it far and wide. You get to send it far and wide as well to all of your people that you know. And hopefully, you're being here, sharing with them the power of 10 will help people who may have been hesitant about going out and speaking. They can feel more confident now in the knowledge. So kind of share with the audience a little bit of the history of Virginia Beach and how we got here.
Okay. So how we got here. So there is a video that when you go to these listening sessions that the city put together. And I would like to make a comment that I did confirm yesterday with Weldon Cooper that the city made the video and provided the video to Weldon Cooper, which was a learning lesson for them because until we started speaking publicly, they were not aware that the video isn't quite accurate. It's missing like a whole section of information because it doesn't, there's no way to present the historical information on what the city has done about our voting system without it looking terrible, which is why I have been going and speaking at every meeting to make sure everybody knows. For listeners, Voting Rights Act was enacted in 1965. Okay. Section 2 specifically of the Voting Rights Act says that minority voters, there cannot be a voting system that disenfranchises a group, a voter block, a group of, like minority voters. Okay. And it was obvious. We know why that was done. It was at the height of the civil rights movement. I don't know if anybody's read this book, highly recommend. One person, no vote. Gives you a great idea of why we had to do the Voting Rights Act. Okay. Well, that was in 1965. We as a city incorporated in 1967, I believe it was. And so they put the city council put a citywide at-large system in place.
Hybrid.
A hybrid, a 7-3-1, but you voted for everybody. Okay. So at large. So basically what that meant was people who live in Bay Colony at the oceanfront, right? They are voting for they're voting for the representative that for whoever's going to represent Kempsville or, like College Park, right? It's pretty obvious why that's a problem. Okay. The problem with any type of at-large system, even if it's 3 members who are at large, because we have a lot of people pushing for that. Okay. Any at-large position, if it is the way the city structured it, it intentionally dilutes the voices and votes of all of our minority community. But in Virginia Beach, let's just be honest, predominantly our Black community. Okay. And that is intentional. Racism, systemic racism it is ingrained in the bones of this city. And so, so that lasted from 1967 all the way until 1994.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I do need to mention is that I don't know if people know this, but we actually did not vote for a mayor until 1988. I believe it was. Yes, 1988.
Right. They were appointed.
They were appointed.
Right.
Our mayor
by
was
the city council members.
That is correct. Yes. So a few little changes here and there. And then 1994, we're becoming, just kind of moving along. And then 1994, we used to have it, and I haven't researched, but I don't think they're that active anymore, or maybe they're getting active again, but it was the Council of Civic Organizations. We had this council, citywide Council of Civic Works. And in 1994, they pushed for a district system. And they collected 28,000 signatures, which is 5,000 more signatures than required to get a judge to put a referendum on the ballot. So that's what they did. They said, we want the voters at Virginia Beach to tell us if they want a district system and if they want a residency requirement for the council person running. So if you're running in the beach, at that time, it was the Beach District. If you're running in Beach District, you need to live in Beach District. Well, that referendum said that we want equal proportional districts. We want the candidate to live in the district of which they're running. And we want only the voters in the district to vote for their representative.
Right.
It passed. And I need to mention that it passed in a midterm year. And we know voter participation in midterm years is lower. It's lower, right, than a presidential general primary, right? Or, I mean, not a primary, but a general presidential. So that was 1994. It passed. 52.7% of the voters said we want it this way. When it went in so that happened in May of 1994, because back then the city was not doing their local elections in November. They were doing them in May. Again, why? Voter turnout. Okay. So that's just another way people need to understand that May elections for your city councils and school boards, that is just another form of voter suppression.
Absolutely.
All
And
right.
we fought against that, and that's how the election got turned around to November. I don't know if you're aware of that.
I actually did not. I kind of assumed that it was either NAACP or the minority communities that kind of went, because that is who it affects the most. Because guess what? Rich white people, they remember to go vote in May, right?
Well,
And
the other thing about voting in May and then again in November and your primaries, people work. So if you have these primaries, special elections, May elections, fall elections, general elections, all of these different elections, you're asking people to take off from work or try to run over there on their lunch break and get back in time and not be dinged for being 5 minutes late from going to vote. Or they have to get up extra early and try to vote at the beginning of the day. But if they got to drop their children off at daycare or whatever, that can prove to be a problem. So when we were looking at it back, I'm trying to remember. But when we started having conversations about the fact that having all these elections can be detrimental in terms of being able to give your input and select who you want.
Well, you've got voter exhaustion because we're one of the few states, Virginia is one of the few states that I learned this every year. We have an election every year. There's just not enough time. It's like you're constantly reactionary, like, because you're trying to work elections every single year, right? And so so they voted in May, right? Well, City Council was trying to not send the referendum to General Assembly because they didn't like the results.
Right.
So at the time, our former mayor, Will Sessoms, was a council person at that time. So Council Member Sessoms, Council Member Baum, according to letters from the editor from 1994, worked to subvert the will of the voters. And what they did was, Delegate Tata, who was in office at the time, and actually Delegate Bob McDonnell, who became the governor. He was a delegate at the time. They sponsored, so they took our referendum, they put it through General Assembly, they made the bill, and then Senator Stolley, who's now our sheriff, he decided to put in a floor substitution. And the floor substitution was, we're great with the equal proportion districts. We're fine with council people living in the district they're running. But I don't think the voters understood the question. I don't think they got it. I think we need to rewrite a new referendum and put that on the ballot in 1996, which, by the way, was a presidential year.
Right.
So they knew that. So you see, it's just so hard to really ignore that, right? And then basically the 1996 referendum said, if you want to vote for all 11 members of council, vote yes. If you only want to vote for 5 out of 11 council members, vote no. Ambiguously worded, intentionally deceptive. And I have letters from the editors, like I said, from people in the community at that time that were calling city council out at that time for what they were doing. Okay. So that was 1996. They figured out a way to stop it, right? They tricked the voters. They figured out a way to stop it. So then nobody does anything about the voting system from 1996 until 2020.
Right.
Jessica Abbott, who was a former council member, brought forth in 2020, July of 2020, a resolution, which when you read the resolution, it actually, she was very smart. She put in the 1994, the 1990. She actually put the history in that resolution, not the nefarious stuff, but just gave a history. And then she presented it to council, and guess what? Council was like, "Oh, it's COVID. This is November. It's July." Now, what I need viewers to understand is that resolution that was presented already had the question, and it was a very clear. You couldn't. There's no other way to reword it. I don't know what kind of wordsmithing they thought they would have to do, but it was a very clear question. So the question was already there. So it was a vote to send it, to get it to the judge, so the judge can put the ballot referendum on for November. Presidential election, we were anticipating very high participation, which we had. They voted 7-4 to kill it. Current council members, we're talking about Rosemary Wilson, we're talking about Michael Berlucci, we're talking about Barbara
Henley, Dyer, Rocky.
No,
Rocky wasn't on because he took Jessica's place.
Yes. But you know, they had the majority. And they did not, and they used the excuse was this. I mean, I quoted Barbara Henley last night. Well, this will change the future of our city, and it's very important that we basically have robust discussion, right? But then fast forward to 2022, after the lawsuit, after the appeal, when they were forced, we were forced by the courts, and this is how I say it to people. I'm like, the judge, when you have been. Let me back up. When your children do something wrong and you punish them for it, right? You punish them because they did something wrong,
right? And
you don't, if it's really egregious, right? It takes some time to build a little trust back.
Correct.
So the courts had to say, Virginia Beach, you're bad. You need a timeout. And then they stuck us in the corner with a dunce cap on. We could not run special elections in this city because we were under court order to not have elections.
Correct.
And so that's that's egregious. And so, you know, here we are, fast forward, you know, to 2020. They were like, oh my gosh, they were I remember the day after the appeal came out last fall, where the appeal, you know, they overturned on appeal. Not the merits of the case, not the merits of what they were doing wrong,
Mhm.
just because of a timing of a bill, okay, that had passed. I was so mad. I was so angry because I already started hearing rumors that council people were already trying to figure out how to not do the district system, but it was too late. So we had to go through with it.
Right.
And we got the youngest, most diverse council. We have four African Americans on our council. We didn't even have 2 African Americans on our council at the same time until 2019.
Right.
And let me tell you, I wanted to get up last night with that man that said 18% and the whole. My husband,
I was feeling the same way. I took a deep breath. I'm thinking, okay, if I had a couple of cousins who have been hungry for 10 years and I find out about it, I bring them to my house and I feed them for 30 days. That does not negate the fact that they were hungry for 10 years.
Yes.
And my mind kept thinking that. And I'm like, how do you stand here before us and say, oh, well, I think that's pretty fair, when you're not actually talking about all the times that it was so unfair, when there was absolutely no Black people on council. Then when one person got on council, they could only serve one term, because you being the loving people in Virginia Beach, and we just have such a diverse community, but you never re-elected anybody to council, like you said, until I think it was 2019, when Sabrina got re-elected for the first time. Then Aaron was re-elected, and then he ran, he stepped down and ran for that Senate, the state Senate. But why should someone have to wait from 1967 to 2020 for one person of one demographic to get reelected?
Correct. And the thing is that the reason why, Dr. Ross Hammond didn't get reelected, it was the at-large system, because what happens is
and they kept changing the district lines.
Yeah.
Because I have been moved in and out of my district based upon, they were afraid that I might run against this council member, or I might run against this delegate on the state level. And I'm looking and I'm like, okay, well, how did I go from District 83 to District 85? And how did I go from Kentsville District to Bayside District? And I have not left my house. I'm still in the same location.
Right.
But they literally moved my line as they felt like it, to prevent me from running against certain candidates.
Yes. Oh, 100% would not disagree with that at all.
Right.
And I think when you talk about the at-large and how they galvanize the base of their voters. So, and I'm going to, may I get partisan for a second, just to give an example?
You can get partisan,
and only to show the
remain nonpartisan, because we want everybody.
Yes, this is just as an example.
Okay.
As an example, Tea Party candidates, which on some issues, I'm in alignment, and I'm a leftist. Okay. So like, I'm pretty progressive. I'm very progressive.
Yeah. You're more left than I am. I can tell you that.
Oh, I know. And that's okay, because that's where compromise comes in. Right. And so we have to have goals, and I might just be way over here. I got to be reined back in. So, anyways, so Tea Party candidates, and then you have, which is just basically people like, I don't want higher taxes. I don't want to pay more taxes. Same. We all, but the difference is how we want to apply those taxes, right?
Absolutely.
And so, but what happens is that they tend, in political party politics, right? On at-large, they tend to run Tea Party candidates because the Republican Party, as example, can galvanize their voters across the entire city, okay, to secure those at-large seats. So they kind of like poo-poo on their own people in a way, because they will.
And they did that on school board, remember?
Yes,
that's part of what they did on school board is,
that's right.
You know, and we couldn't fight all the battles simultaneously.
Correct.
So we focused on city council. So when people start talking about, well, you know,
we lost on school board.
Yes, it did.
Yeah, but I'm going to be honest.
Sometimes you have to win some, and sometimes you have to wait to win some. I don't like to call it losing some. I like to call it wait to win some more.
Sure. And I think that there was a difficult, so because of the way we've done things for a really long time, right? And because there were candidates last year that had some long time name recognition, but had never run in the same, they'd never run in a district system this way, right?
Correct.
And the district that they lived in may not have been as friendly to them, okay, as once redistricting happened. And they didn't quite pick up fast enough to they didn't re-strategize their campaign, right? Fast enough to actually campaign for the districting system. So I don't blame the districting system as much for our school board losses. But I mean, the bottom line is that those candidates for school board, they were galvanized, they were incentivized, they had huge dollar donations, and they were prepared, and
they ran as a team.
They did.
Whereas some of the people who were on school board did not run as a block. They did not come together with a strong enough message that the community at large could relate to. And so they allow themselves to be compromised by this new messaging that's out there, CRT, or I want parents' involvement, or so all of
parental rights. Let me tell you, I have 5 kids graduate out of Virginia Beach City Public Schools. One of my children is 29 years old today. I had never felt that I did not have parental rights. This is a dog whistle for racism. That's what that is. And so they are using that this is what people need to understand, though, is that performative outrage actors are a thing right now. Okay. And they're using outrage to motivate people to get to the polls.
Absolutely.
And this is why we have to we really have to pay attention. I'm going to talk about it tonight at my speech a little bit. How we have got to get the community to understand that the city council and school board are seed seats. They are seed seats for state and federal elected positions.
Elections, exactly.
And so if you're not paying attention to your local politics, to be honest, the order of which I would prefer citizens paid attention to politics would be know your city council, know your school board, know what's going on, okay? Then state level, then federal level. Because we're so far removed from policy at a federal level, but we are not far removed from policy here in the city. And we're not that far removed from policy at a state level. I mean, I talk to state delegates all the time. They're normal, everyday people that you're going to run into in the grocery store,
Absolutely.
At Target. And these people are people making laws that actually affect you and your children and your grandchildren. Now, our local officials aren't passing laws because they can't. We're a Dillon Rule state. So that means our city they can only pass ordinances. Everything has to go to General Assembly. So local and state have to work together. But if you're just now starting to pay attention, just baby step it with school board and city council.
Absolutely. And you make some excellent points there, even down to going to these meetings. And just so that we can refresh the people who are listening, the city of Virginia Beach had a lawsuit against their illegal election system. The judge ruled in the favor of the plaintiffs and told the city of Virginia Beach, the largest city in the Commonwealth of Virginia, that they had to change the election system in order to make it fairer for persons of color and the disenfranchised community. So what we ended up with were 3 majority minority districts or influential districts where the minority communities could influence the outcome.
Minority opportunity. Yep.
Did I do it well?
You did a great job. Minority opportunity districts. It's exactly what that is. Yep.
Exactly. And so with the lawsuit, it forced the city to do what they should have been doing all the time. And once we had the judicial system on our side, once the courts ruled in the favor of the plaintiffs, it allowed the city of Virginia Beach for the first time in its history to elect 3 Black people on city council in one election cycle. So for those of you who are listening out there who may not be from the city of Virginia Beach, who may be from somewhere else, sometimes you have to sue your city if you want to change your outcome. Now, Melissa is here because Melissa has, she remembers a lot better than I do. So she has a wealth of knowledge with regards to the history of the city of Virginia Beach and how the city did a number of different things. That when the people said we want to vote for district voting, they changed and went back and said, oh, we don't like what they said, so let's rewrite the way the referendum is worded. So, and the reason why I share that with you, because a lot of times people go and they work and they make a difference, and then all of a sudden powers come into play and they push back against the work that you did, the changes that you made, to help frustrate you. So I say that to let you know you have to stay the course and you have to continue the fight, because if you don't, you're going to leave that fight to your children and your grandchildren. So people like Melissa and myself who understand that just because you have a win and a check mark, that doesn't mean that that is not going to get changed, turned around over, or anything. Take a look at our Supreme Court. That should give you an idea of how often when you vote and say, this is what I agree with, they can turn around and change it. Same thing with Congress. For years, assault weapons were banned for individuals. Now, they could be used in our military. They could be used by a SWAT team when they were in a situation that was so egregious in terms of someone out there maybe killing up a bunch of people, setting things on fire, and they needed to go and remove that enemy. Okay, they continue to be able to use those things. But for individuals, when we had no assault weapons, when we had the ban in place, there were less mass shootings. There were less children dying. And now we are back in a situation where we have more children deaths than we have car accident deaths for our children. So I just wanted to put that out there just to remind you that it is not a snap of the finger. And yes, it's finished. It's done. So, Melissa, we're going to be going to some more public hearings. And just so that the audience will know, if you're local, even if it's not your district, keep in mind, you can go to any of these public hearings. We have one tonight at College Park Elementary School at 6:30. We have one tomorrow night, which is Friday night, at Williams Farm Recreation Center at 5:30. We have one on Saturday, April the 1st, at Advanced Technology Center at 4:30. And then on Sunday, April the 2nd, we have one at Bow Creek Recreation Center at 3 p.m. And then on Monday, we have two. We have a virtual meeting on Monday, April the 3rd at 1 o'clock. And then on Monday, April the 3rd, we have our last meeting at First Colonial High School at 6:30 p.m. So if you're in the city of Virginia Beach, regardless of where you live, you are allowed and able to participate at any of these sessions. Other thing that I think is important is that every one of these sessions you can go online virtually from your home and still watch, even if you can't come in person. And if the virtual system messes up, because for some reason it doesn't want me to go on virtually, so I have to dial in, but I can still listen to the whole session. And so you have three ways. You can go in person, you can do it virtually, or you can call in by phone. And we want you to know that. Again, this is GA for Justice. I am Georgia Allen, your host today, and we have a fabulous, fabulous guest, Melissa Lukeson, who is a business owner and a community activist. So go ahead and share with the audience a little bit more, because I usually wait until about 4:50, 4:52, 4:53, and let you do your final comments. Okay.
Oh, yeah. So when you were talking about the ban, just last night I saw the from 1994 to, so many things were happening in 1994. 1994 to 2004, which is when the assault ban hit the sunset. And then, of course, 2004. So we did not have enough control over federal, right, for gun control. And then it just went all downhill from there when we elected our first Black president, because it was never going to happen after we elected our first Black president. It was never going to happen again.
Right. Because of course, all the jobs belong to that special select group of people. Correct. So that's right. Having a Black president, he took somebody's job.
It's crazy, right? It's crazy. But yeah,
I love having you here because we feed off of each other.
I know. And so, but with, when I think it's important that viewers understand that reading between the lines with some of the things that these politicians, like our council, one of my objectives with public speaking this over the 10 days is to be very succinct with my delivery of my information, factual. There is not anything in I go to great lengths to make sure that everything that I say is true, that I don't misquote anybody, because it's really important for credibility.
Correct.
This council is tired. They are tired of me. They are tired of you, Georgia. Okay. And that's exactly where we want them, because they need what you were talking about earlier, is that they do believe that they'll outlast us.
Correct.
They will, they wear people down on purpose, and it gets frustrating. And listen, there have been times where I'm like, why am I stressing myself out like this? I'll be honest, I compensate my employees well. We pay 100% of their health insurance. And all they want me to do is make sure that payroll's done on time, and I come in and water all my plants, because as many plants as I have at home, I have twice as many at my studio. So they run our business for us, and because after 13 years, we've worked hard to do that. And so they hate that I have all this free time. I love that I have all this free time, but my free time could be way less stressful. And it's frustrating. And there's times where, I have more losses from what I consider losses, something that I show up fighting for. Right.
Right.
I have walked out of council or school board meetings with more losses than I've ever walked out with wins. But the few wins I've had, they make it, they keep me going, right? Because they do think they will outlast them. But what they don't realize is that one of my early mentors in Wall Street was a man called Bill Sparkman. He called himself the coach. And one of the things that stuck with me was, I will outwork you. I was in sales for years. And he said, I don't care. You can have all the products, you can have all the things, but I will outwork you. And that is exactly how I feel about politics. I will do it in a way of which I'm bringing your words to you right back in your face, and I'm showing you how hypocritical you are. People like Barbara Henley and Rosemary Wilson, the words that they're saying when they're up on that dais, and then the votes that they're casting and how they wrap it up. They try to wrap things up and put a bow on it, and I'm like,
correct.
a pile of dog poop in a box with a bow on it is still a pile of dog poop.
Absolutely.
So we have to continue and be diligent. And I'll be honest, I don't know about you, but I feel an energy of people starting to get more engaged and involved. And I think that is scaring some of our local politicians a lot.
I believe that too. And I am so glad that they decided to do this input session.
Too. I was so
it allowed us to meet so many new people that we didn't even know existed.
Yeah.
And so many people who had been sitting on the sideline, frustrated, feeling like this city didn't care about them, and weren't participating in the processes. And now they woke a sleeping giant.
Yes.
And so while they were going after people like you and myself, guess what? We now have reinforcements.
That's right. That's right. Right. That's exactly right. And honestly, like we were in the same boat with this whole process. Like, this is ridiculous. They present at these meetings, right? The video presents this to the public as if this is we have a decision to make.
Right.
We do not have a decision to make. There has been a decision
made already.
Council all they needed to do was submit a charter change, but they're like, well, I mean, here's our excuse. The charter doesn't match what the court said. So the ambiguous language that they use is really important. And I'm glad now that we did it, because now I can see how many people support 10-1 like I do, and you do, and everybody else. And also it really, I mean, I think this backfired on some members of council, and I'm here for it. Like I'm like, this is not the flex you thought it was.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the other thing is what you were sharing earlier with regards to the fact that you probably have more losses than wins, but your wins are transformational. And that is the thing that is so important. It's when you have those wins, they're transformational. So I see our engineer back here, producer. That's our signal. But anyway, today show topic was Power of 10, the power of 10 districts. Virginia Beach has been successful in fighting against, members of the city of Virginia Beach have been successful in fighting against the city in terms of the election process. So now we have a process that we, the people, are pleased with. So with that being said, Melissa, we're going to let you do your final remarks with regards to the power of 10 in the city of Virginia Beach. And we're getting ready to close everything out. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. This has been wonderful. I love being able to talk on something that I'm very familiar with, of course. All I'm going to say is, listen, we need public engagement, and we need more people showing up. And I would highly suggest, if you cannot make it in person for a session, go and watch the previous sessions or watch a session live if you want to stay home and watch. But really look at this and listen to the speakers and what they're saying, and just start trying to pay attention a little bit here and there.
Absolutely. Well, again, Melissa, we are so grateful that you came out and joined us on the show. And again, it is important that we get engaged in our local politics. The power of 10 is all about us having representation. Part of what we keep hearing when we go out to these open sessions is people come to the microphone and they say, For the first time in my history, I know who my council member is. I never knew them before.
Yeah.
We hear people saying, I love the 10-1 district because the voting system, because now my council member lives in our district. We know who he is, who she is, and they know what our concerns are. If we need a traffic light, if there's a pothole, now these people know those things front and center. Whereas in the past, even though you had people that were supposed to be your council members because they got elected citywide, many times they were working on everybody's issue, but the issue in the district where they were supposed to be representing, because they said, well, if they get mad with me, I'll just go get the votes from the rest of the city. So they had no accountability. The other thing that we hear a lot about is representation, accountability, and they know me, I know them.
That's right.
This is so very important. When you're looking at elections, you want to look at elections that are fair, and they are fair to everybody. And we heard a young, older lady last night say, well, I just want to vote for everybody. I just want to vote for everybody. I don't like that I just get to vote for one because I paid my tax money to all of them. Well, you had the opportunity to vote for everybody before. And guess what? You still didn't know who was working on your issues. You still weren't able to call them up. But guess what? Now you can.
Well, or they did, Georgia, or they did know that they were working on their issues. And that's why they wanted to vote for all of them because of special interest.
Because they are fortunate enough to have that special interest, whereas most people don't have that special interest, you know. And so with that being said, again, I am Georgia Allen with GA for Justice. We are here every Thursday at 12 noon. If you know anybody who would be a person that would work well on this show, because we don't sit here to bash people or bash our community or talk about every negative thing that has happened. We are here to, one, inform, give people the information. The second thing, we want to correct when things are wrong. And finally, we want to transform. It's information, correction, and transformation. Melissa, thank you so much for joining us today, and you have a wonderful evening. I should see you tonight at College Park.
Yes, I'll see you tonight. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, another great show. You got 2 minutes before you close out.
I do. I thought it was a half a minute.
Well, it's 58. It's 58 and 30 seconds.
Well, anyway, this was wonderful. I hope this has been helpful to those of you who live in Virginia Beach, but also for those of you who may live somewhere else. It takes rolling up your sleeve. If you see something that's going on in your community, in your city, in your neighborhood, you're gonna have to roll up your sleeve, and you're gonna have to be willing to put in the work to make changes. We had to do that in Virginia Beach. We had to sue the city of Virginia Beach with regards to the illegal election process. The plaintiffs won, and guess what? We changed the outcome. And thank you, Mr. Khalid. Okay, and I'm sure Henderson has that information, and we'll get back to you. Yeah. We'd love to have you get involved.
Well,
take care.
All right. You've been listening and watching GA for Justice with your host, then now the Vice President of the Virginia Beach NAACP, Ms. Georgia Allen. Until next week at 12 to 1. Thank you for watching, and please share this with the people on your social media network. Until then, goodbye.